So welcome to another review. It's read to be done with The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. This is the first book in the Discworld series. I got lucky enough and found someone who had it and was willing to loan me the book to read. And so today we'll go through the same process. We'll talk about what the book's about, the cons, the pros, and a conclusion. So let's get into it. So, The Color of Magic is, take it as an introduction to the Discworld. Alright, first and foremost, that's what the book's all about. But what happens is, of course, there has to be a story connected to it, and so Terry Pratchett basically takes you around the world to a certain extent. Maybe not the whole of the Discworld, but the important parts to what is the current storyline in the first few books, through the eyes of course, the famous characters of Rincewince the Wizard and Twoflower the Tourist, and of course, along with them is that famous piece of luggage bag made from that magical wood with hundreds of feet. And also, if you remember, you played the Discworld adventure game, you'll know that's where you keep all your inventory. Alright, and you go through an adventure with these characters around the Discworld. And the reason why the title is called The Color of Magic, as I was a bit confused at first, wondering why that is so, is because the Discworld is not like our world. It has an 8th color. And on top of that, other than it being called octarine, there's also another mineral that is basically also a magical substance. So the reason why it's called The Color of Magic is to introduce the idea how the world of magic in the world of this world works and how it makes sense. So it's kind of basically explaining that and how the whole world of this world works. And of course, their adventures takes them along to many different kind of weird situations, such as meeting death, for one, meeting imaginary dragons that become real, and having gods make bets about their lives and stuff like that, so on and so forth. So that's what the whole book's about, but overall it's an introduction done to the Discworld. So let's go into the cons of the book. Now the first con of the book is, well, it's really weird to say, but the first 15 pages. Because the first 15 pages, it describes the Discworld, and it's a lot of information thrown at you at one time. Basically, imagine you open a book and straight away it says that the world is carried on a giant turtle, on which are 4 elephants, on which the Discworld is, and there's the travel of the winds and the winds of the magic and all of that. It goes rimward, hubward, and stuff like that. And it's, like I said, it's a lot of information thrown at you. It's cool that Terry Pratchett takes you as a very thinking individual. I mean, this is not a book that someone who doesn't want to think when he's reading it will enjoy, I feel. But it's a lot of information in the first 15 pages. And I won't lie to you, if I did not, know about Terry Pratchett and know about so much about the Discworld in my years. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I have a cursory knowledge of Discworld, and I enjoyed several of his characters and also his board games on the Discworld. I might not have gotten through the first 15 pages because trying to understand, example, especially things like hubward, what's hubward, what's rimward, and how the whole geography works and all that was kind of hard. Unless, like I said, you wanted to get invested, So I actually had to reread the first 15 pages 2 times before I really got a rough idea on how all these things work. And therein, I'd say, is just a small problem, is the first 15 pages, it's a lot of information. And not everybody might be expecting that for a book. Like, my relative saw this and instantly thought it's a children's book. So, if you were expecting something really, really light and easy to read, without a lot of thought, this is not exactly the book for you. And the other problem with the book is basically its ending. Again, of course, this book was no way this book was made to be read and the story itself completed in itself. At the end of this book, it's not horrible. First, I have to state that, but it does feel like a cliffhanger. A lot of the main story arcs of the entire book does not end with the end of The Color of Magic, unlike many Dungeons and Dragons books where they have an overarching storyline, but the story in itself is kind of capped. This one, it ends, that means the adventure, so to speak, ends at a chapter end, but nothing really of the main storylines basically gets solved. So there is that. It does leave you a bit wanting. It doesn't feel like half a book, but like I said, it makes you leave you wanting more, which might not be a bad thing. So with that, let's go into the pros of the book. Now, the first pro of the book is obviously that this is a introduction to the Discworld, and let me tell you, it is quite fascinatingly really good, because I say it also teaches you, if you're doing RPGs and all that, how to create a world. Because not a lot of people can do this, and you can see this all the time in comics, especially, where they contradict their own world. There are only a very few people who can make worlds so consistent and vast at the same time. And I gotta say, this from the color of magic, again, I'm reviewing this book by itself, does that fantastically. I read through the whole book, and there was almost no contradictions. I mean, glaring contradictions that I could really spot. If you've seen a lot of my reviews, that's the thing I always talk about, is contradictions in books and everything. It felt everything just tied together, like the whole idea of why magic works, and how is it that the whole idea of magic kind of supersedes science, whereby and here's the thing, it makes so much sense. Why would anybody make science when there is magic, right? And people talk about that, in fact, Rincewince can't even come up with the idea of science. He thinks about it, but there's no formulation, because no one in the world really had to make science, so to speak. So you can tell that this was not just an ad hoc thing, that he really thought through the world. He had the story planned out, and truly shows. It's a wonderful world and very, very consistent. And then the other thing, of course, is not only is the world cool, the characters in it are absolutely fascinating. Of course, my favorite is Death. Alright, Death is so wonderful. He's menacing, but at the same time, he feels like an office worker. All he wants to do, he's very anal about his work, and all he wants to do is do his job. And so constantly with wizards such as Rincewince, they're so important in a way that Death has to collect them himself. He cannot send his subordinates to do it. So constantly he's chasing after Rincewince, who's supposed to die. He doesn't take a lot of pleasure in collecting souls and all this. Just like I say, he has to keep his so-called quota and stuff like that. So it's not just black and white in this world. So there's a lot of the characters have these multifacets, which is really interesting in the book. Definitely also made for kids to read, but with a lot of, it's basically like Shrek, why Shrek was so cool, whereby the kids and adults can read it and both sides get something out of it. And building on that, in one facet that is pretty obvious is the fact that when Terry Pratchett describes the dryads, the female dryads especially, and Liesa, the person who is the dragon rider. Alright, basically there's at many points he just explains they're totally naked. They're just taking off their clothes and stuff like that. And when Liesa meets at one point Harun the Barbarian, which is again Conan's stand-in, basically she talks about his tool, and how he's going into battle with her with his weapon drawn, so to speak. So, but at the same time, like I said, it's really smart, because she wrote it in such a way that if a kid was reading it, he wouldn't get it, and he would not even have really understand the idea. So it's not offensive in any way. Amazing. Again, how he treads both those lines, amazing. The cool part also is that, because of the magic and all of that, there are crossovers with our world, and the dimensions cross. At one point when, like example, the Dragon Riders, some incredible magic was released, and so there was a dimensional rift, and a psychologist in our world saw basically the idea of dragons and dragon riders, and basically the person in the Discworld saw the idea of psychology or something. And again, this is the cool part about Terry Pratchett, right? He doesn't take his audience as idiots. There's a lot of crossovers with current history, and so I'm quite sure that he's referring to an author who wrote maybe something like The Lord of the Rings or something, and about current events happening in today's world. That issue, of course, is that you might not get it. Like for me, I did not manage to catch who the person was in history, but like I say, it's cool that he has these little references to modern day world, our world. And the most important thing is you have to understand that when this was written, even in today's world, this is a very different book. Now I can understand why the Discworld series is so popular, because it's an incredibly funny book and totally unique, and totally it gives a nod to why the Discworld series is as popular as it is. So overall, The Color of Magic is an absolutely wonderful book. You know, it basically shows, like I say, it shows so much of his genius. The world is consistent, it's vast, alright. The idea of magic somehow is explained so well, and everybody reacts in the world for the most part realistically. People die in the world, all right. Although it's PG in a way that he says that people just kind of, was killed, for example, but he doesn't explain in detail how it was done. So that's the Discworld series, the first book, The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. Thank you very much. Till next word.